Hey guys, how you doing? A real quick announcement. I'm going to restrict the videos to around 20 minutes from now on. After speaking with many viewers, I think this is the length that you will find most useful, but let me know in the comments section below what you think. Every book is different, of course, and quality is more important than quantity. However, the distillation of thought into a shorter time frame may improve the quality of these reviews. Brevity is a soul of wit, so there you go. Welcome to Better Than Food, the obvious joke being that there is nothing better than food. Nothing. Lately, I've come to realize how integral food is to everything and everyone. It's the source of everyone's collective neuroses. Whether we are a culture that is trying to eat less, in the case of developed nations, or obviously the opposite, a culture that needs more food and is trying to eat more. Food, for those who do not despise it, is a doubly divine gift. The gift of skill given to mankind and brought to bear on the fruits provided by nature. Says today's author Maguelonne Toussaint-Samat in A History of Food. The book is chronologically structured by time and food type. For example, the very beginning with the history of hunting and gathering, followed by the history of meat, the history of cereals, the history of fish and poultry, wine, spice, etc., up until the present. We're covering 750 pages in a very short time here, and some of the chapters in the book, are drier than an Arizona snakeskin, but, not necessarily the ones you may think. The history of cereals, like the history of meats, is actually pretty damn interesting. So I'm going to give you a stew of thoughts and anecdotes from various chapters to stimulate your intellect and appetite. To be uninterested in food is to be uninterested in life itself, of course. Food dictates everything, and you can learn everything about a person by looking at the food that they're eating. Where they come from, their social class, their patience, their discipline, their ability to take care of themselves, how hard they work, how healthy or intelligent they are, how much they care about their health, how much they don't care about their health. It says more about you than your income, your clothing, any sort of material good. It tells a story, your history, our history. When you're eating out, you're having a dialogue with thousands of years of human history and culture, distilled into a couple of sides and a main course, along with a wine or beer of which the process of creating is older than most dirt. Food is so necessary that we take it for granted half of the time. We don't even notice it, particularly if we're interested in fitness, or have like a weight loss or a muscle building goal, in which proportion and measurements are often, let's face it, fairly boring, predictable, antithetical to spontaneity or novelty, or entertainment, so much of what foodie culture adheres to. This can make reaching those fitness goals more difficult, because not only are you suffering from boredom, but now you are also suffering from the dreaded fear of missing out, because there are so many options available to you. Tell me what you eat, and I will tell you what you are, says Savoring in one of his famous gastronomical aphorisms. It may be the most famous declaration in gastronomical culture. Maguelonne Toussaint-Samat is a French author who has taken on the enormous task of concocting a basic history of food as it pertains to the West. The perfect accompaniment, and often faster and more entertaining companion to this, is the lecture by Ken Albala on the Great Courses Plus about food. I forget the exact name of it, but you just type in food and you'll find it. I'm shilling this not because I'm an affiliate, but because I decided to check it out after some initial curiosity, and I have to say it's absolutely worth the price, which is like 20 bucks a month or something, and you just get lectures and lectures and lectures and lectures. It's all this excellent information. I highly recommend it. So, right, food. You have problems with it, so do I. So does everybody. I've never met anyone with a perfect relationship to food, at least all of the time. Ever. I don't think it exists. Everyone is different and everybody has their own problems, lifestyle, etc. But this is something that we all must do daily. Like Jeffrey Rush playing the Marquis de Sade in the amazing film Quills said, we eat, we shit, we fuck, we kill, and we die! Eating, shitting, and dying are, of course, the ones that are non-negotiable. The three that every human being must and will do. Everyone is obsessed with food, and all of it is related to sex and death. No food, no sex. No system of preserving food, no sex, no life. Your sex drive is directly dependent on your food intake. If you doubt the strength of the connection, try fasting for 36 hours and then getting the motivation to go and have sex. It's unsurprising then that where there are harvest festivals, there's fornication. A lot of it. Within the history of food is the history of mankind. The stories and legends of men and women and warfare and idealism and struggle and the conquering of nations. The story of us, all of us, rising from the Fertile Crescent with the conquering Akkadians adopting the culture of Sumer and then creating the first recipes, to the excesses of Rome and the Greeks, who had the first cookbooks, so to speak. In verse, reminds me of Virgil's poems and the Georgics. Go check out that review. Dionysian rituals involved naked men and women tearing apart live animals and eating them raw. The sacrifice to the gods of the earth and corn by the Aztecs. The history of wine and beer and the demonstration of monks being basically the biggest drinkers in history. A funny story involving beer-making monks in itself. They would pour a batch on a bench, right? Sit on it in their robes for a little while, and see how much the cloth stuck when they got up to test the beer's strength. If the robe sticks, that's a good brew, my friend. Food growing in the Middle Ages owed almost everything to monasteries, writes the author. So the structure of the book begins with the basics, hunting and gathering, right? Speaks on the history of honey, meat, fish, grains, cereals. Cereals actually dates back to 10,000 BC in Jordan. Moves on to the Holy Trinity of bread, oil, and wine, frequently found in the Bible. It's basically like what allowed culture to become, culture. It's what made European culture what it is. So when mankind reaches the Bronze and Iron Ages, she writes, the physical relief of satisfying hunger could now be allied to the intellectual pleasure of the enjoyment of food, which had not yet, fortunately, been denounced as a mortal sin. It was a pleasure which, like other pleasures, became a vice only when it got out of control. Of course, we all know what happened to that. Of course, bread, wine, and oil had existed before the Greeks, but no one before them spoke so eloquently on the subject. True dat. Olive oil has always had this sacred character, right? Gods, according to myths and legends, had been born under the olive oil trees. Romulus and Remus, the founders of Rome, were born under an olive tree. She says, I don't know if it's true, but she says that the cross, that Jesus was crucified on was actually carved out of olive tree. The Bretons would place a pat of butter near a person dying of cancer. The butter was supposed to absorb the disease, and it was buried after the sick person's death. So within the book, you'll find descriptions of ancient diseases, highly technical outlines of fermentation and cultivation. But really the highlights for me were just the stories about, the history of the food that we're still eating today, The shape of the croissant is supposed to celebrate the defeat of the Turks in 1683. It was said that a baker going to bake a batch of bread had raised the alarm. So next time you're having a pain au chocolat or a chocolate croissant, just remember, Turkish warfare. Yeah. You see, it all goes back to sex and death. Nothing escapes. Nothing. Especially coffee. Oh man. The chapter on coffee is excellent. The chapter on spices is incredible. The chapter on spices actually suggests that at one point historically, men were willing to risk life, limb, and damnation to obtain things like nutmeg and cinnamon. The chapter on wine, of course, is a high point, references to the Greek and Roman cultures. The symbolism in the mythology of the vine, its blood connotations, of course, paving the way for religious affiliations and assimilation. The Greeks did not actually invent wine. They did even better. In making the god Dionysus its patron, they immortalized it. Food for thought. Noah, yes, as in the ark builder, if you did not already know, was the first of the drunkards. Celtic warriors, mostly Welsh and Irish, would compete to see who could drink the most beer at Samhain. Beer was supposed to ensure their immortality. In many ancient cultures, just like today, the poor drank beer and the rich drank wine. Besides giving wine a god of its own, the Greeks invented philosophy. It was surely no coincidence. She's got some pretty good lines in this one. She does well. Furthermore, as the history progresses, you find the crossroads of culture. Similar or identical recipes popping up in different areas around the globe. The assimilation of certain customs. The obscure origins of pasta and the fury of the Italians when it's suggested that it may have come from the Chinese. Not to mention the grand mystery of the name macaroni. According to her, nobody knows. Interestingly, I did not know this. The tomato is actually from America, though of course nobody has divined that fruit quite like the Italians and the Spanish. Food is not only social, of course, it is political. Royalty prohibiting lower classes from hunting, therefore quite literally letting everybody know where they stand as far as what they're eating. Restrictions on hunting are as old as time. It always goes along these lines, right? The royalty rule, the soldiers enforce, the priests manage, and the people work. There has been no clearer criterion of social class over the centuries than the color of bread eaten. The harvests dictated when you would declare war. The history of murder and bloodshed is at the mercy of the grain. You wouldn't declare war until the corn was safely in, thereby having reserves and free men to fight. For 6,000 years, the strength of nations depended on their stocks of wheat. The significance of the slang term bread for money is obvious. There are many, many, many stories within this story. I couldn't possibly cover them all. Of course, myths surrounding certain foods, gluttony to end all gluttony, outrageously excessive meals, like when the Roman Emperor Heliogabalus had a feast that involved 600 ostrich heads, wherein they only ate the brains. Maize in the Americas was called tawa by the Zuni Indians, which also meant old. It's a life-generating, life-sustaining food. The Aztecs and the Incas knew this. And you know the Aztecs and the Incas. If something's important, they're gonna sacrifice for it and do some fucked up shit. And they did. At the height of the festival, the priest would decapitate a young girl, skin her while the body is still warm, wear her skin along with his liturgical vestments, she says, dancing through town with other priests and peoples while eating these maize cakes made with human blood. He would wear that skin for a week, by the way. Animals, as of course you know, had different status in different cultures. The horse was often associated with the fertility of harvest. In Northern Europe, especially Scandinavia, threshing grounds were marked out by the skulls of horses disposed at the 4 points of the compass. It's so metal. Finally, here is what may be the most disturbing anecdote from the book. Just for me, I guess. Pigs, I learned, are delicious, and as a species, horrifying because of their ability and desire to eat everything, including when they were less supervised babies. Yes. They would wander into houses in the Middle Ages and eat infants. Still do in some places, I've discovered. So the next time you're feeling guilty about that beautiful pork tenderloin, remember, there is nothing that little piggy wants more than the fruit of your own tenderloins. Burn in hell, you sons of bitches. Looking at the historical charts, it's overwhelming to think of all of these people who have came and ate and gone before us. Overwhelming. The estimated number of people who have ever lived on the planet Earth is about 107 billion. The amount of people that are alive today they estimate are around 7 billion, right? So that means that around 7% of people who have ever existed ever are alive right now. We've come a long way, we really have, when you see those numbers. But nobody knows who created bread. At least here. Now, nobody knows, according to her. Lots of theories, no answers. Bread remains a gift from the gods. For me, this is not a book to be read by itself, especially quickly, which I did. I read it over the course of a month, which is pretty fast. I recommend taking this on chapter by chapter for like 6 months, maybe a year, savoring it, listening to all these other lectures and this supplementary material, really getting into it, allowing the flavors to wash over your brain. But, do what you want. The logic is that, time will allow for all of it to sink in and you'll enjoy it that much more. We have come from the days of hunting and killing with our bare hands to waiting for 3 hours in line for an $11 fried chicken sandwich, while calling ourselves foodies. I'm dead serious when I tell you that is a true story that happened last Saturday in Chinatown over at Hal and Ray's here in Los Angeles. I went over there. There was a fucking line of 100 people waiting for an $11 fried chicken sandwich before noon. Marketing is everything, kids. Everything. The average American woman weighs 160 pounds. The average American man weighs around 191 pounds. This is like 17 pounds up from ideal weight. It's a disturbing amount more than from what it was, 40 years ago. We have become soft and flabby and quite comfortable. Good? Bad? What do you think? And one more note, if you're interested in food, ancient religion, sacrifice, and of course sex and death, the only film which has pulled it off altogether, combining all topics with this excellent synergy in the story and narrative, is the original 1973 British film The Wicker Man with Christopher Lee. Rest in peace. A brilliant film. So that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you're doing very well. Much more great stuff coming up this October. Gonna get into some, darker material just for the season. And yeah, hope you guys enjoy. Always remember that life is too short to eat and read bullshit, and thanks. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking around. I hope you're all doing well. I'll talk to you guys soon. Have a good one. Ciao.